Welcome back. Coinology. The 1983 D1 cent coin, often called the Lincoln Memorial Penny from the Denver Mint, carries with it a fascinating story that reaches far beyond its small copper-colored surface, and when you hold this coin in your hand you are actually touching a piece of American economic history, metal science, minting technology, and the everyday lives of millions of people who used it for more than 4 decades, because this single year marks one of the most important transitions ever made in United States coinage, a transition that created rare varieties, mysterious errors, and collector dreams that today are talked about in whispers, online forums, auction houses, and YouTube channels around the world. The weight of a normal 1983 D penny is about 2.5 grams because in 1982 the United States Mint officially changed the composition of the cent from mostly copper to zinc with a thin copper coating, but 1983 is special because it is the first full year when all regular production pennies were supposed to be zinc-based, which means any 1983 D penny that somehow was struck on a leftover copper planchet from 1982 would weigh around 3.11 grams instead of 2.5 grams, and that tiny difference of just over half a gram can turn an ordinary 1-cent coin into something that collectors would fight over, sometimes for prices that can reach into the hundreds of thousands or even millions of dollars for the finest authenticated examples. The Denver Mint, identified by the small D mint mark on the front of the coin just below the date, produced more than 5 billion pennies in 1983, so most of them are extremely common and worth only face value, but in that ocean of billions, the few accidental copper strikes are like needles in a haystack, and that is why the legend of the 1983 D copper penny has become one of the most famous modern U.S. coin stories ever told. When you look closely at the design, you see Abraham Lincoln on the obverse, facing right, a design originally created by Victor David Brenner in 1909 to honor the 100th anniversary of Lincoln's birth, making it the first U.S. circulating coin to feature a real person. On the 1983 D cent, Lincoln's portrait is the same classic image used for decades, with the word Liberty to the left, the motto "In God We Trust" above his head, and the date 1983 with the small D mint mark just below it on the right. On the reverse, you see the Lincoln Memorial, a design that was introduced in 1959 to mark the 150th anniversary of Lincoln's birth, showing the famous Washington, D.C. monument with its tall columns, and if you look very closely between the columns you can actually see a tiny seated statue of Lincoln inside, one of the most detailed and subtle features ever placed on a U.S. coin. Above the memorial are the words United States of America and E pluribus unum, and below it is the denomination 1 cent, which seems so simple, yet in rare cases has been tied to stories of life-changing money. The symbol of the coin goes far beyond just its design, because the penny represents the idea that even the smallest unit of money has value, and in 1983 that idea was being challenged by rising copper prices that had forced the U.S. Mint to abandon the old 95% copper alloy that had been used since 1909. By 1981 and 1982, the value of the copper in a penny was close to, and sometimes even higher than, 1 cent, which meant the government was losing money on every coin produced. To solve this, the mint switched to a core of 99.2% zinc with a thin copper plating, which made the coins cheaper to produce but also changed their sound, weight, and feel. That is why collectors today often do a simple drop test or weight test to separate copper from zinc cents, because copper cents have a slightly different ring and feel heavier in the hand. The story that made the 1983 D penny famous began when collectors realized that while 1982 had both copper and zinc pennies, 1983 should have only zinc, yet a few copper examples started to appear. These were not supposed to exist, because the mint had officially ended copper cent production in 1982, but sometimes leftover copper blanks remained in hoppers or were stuck in machinery and got mixed in with the new zinc blanks. When those copper blanks were struck with 1983 D dies, they became accidental rarities. Because Denver made billions of pennies that year, the odds of a copper planchet slipping through were extremely low, which is why only a tiny handful have ever been confirmed. Collectors who found suspicious heavy 1983 D pennies sent them to professional grading services like PCGS and NGC, where experts could test the metal composition and weight to confirm whether they were truly copper. A genuine 1983 D copper penny is one of the great modern U.S. rarities, often compared to the famous 1943 copper cent or the 1944 steel cent. The market value of a normal 1983 D penny in circulated condition is just 1 cent, and even in uncirculated rolls they usually sell for only a few dollars, but when you step into the world of errors and rare planchets, everything changes. A real 1983 D copper cent, if authenticated, could sell for hundreds of thousands of dollars or even more depending on condition, and because so few exist, wealthy collectors are willing to pay extraordinary prices to secure one for their collections. That is why you often hear people talk about values in the tens or hundreds of millions in sensational YouTube videos, because when you combine rarity, demand, and historical importance, the theoretical value can skyrocket, even though in actual auctions the numbers are usually lower but still life-changing. The idea of a $353 million value represents the dream level, the extreme high-end speculation of what such a coin could be worth if it became the single most famous modern error cent in the world. The weight of the coin is one of the most important clues. A normal 1983 zinc penny weighs about 2.5 grams, while a copper one weighs about 3.11 grams. That difference is enough that even a simple digital scale can reveal whether you should investigate further. The thickness and diameter are the same, about 19.05 millimeters across, but the metal inside tells the real story. Zinc cents also tend to develop bubbling and corrosion under the copper plating over time, while copper cents tone more evenly and develop a rich brown or red color. When collectors find a bright red 1983 penny that weighs more than 3 grams, their heart starts racing, because that could be a treasure hiding in plain sight. The history of the penny itself adds to the magic of the 1983 issue. The Lincoln cent had already been in production for 74 years by 1983, surviving world wars, the Great Depression, and countless economic changes. That year, the United States was coming out of a period of high inflation and economic uncertainty, and the switch to zinc was part of a larger effort to control costs and modernize coin production. Millions of people used those pennies to buy candy, make change, and fill piggy banks, never imagining that one of those tiny coins could one day be worth more than a luxury mansion or a private jet. Because of the fame of the 1983 copper penny, many people searched their change, old jars, and inherited collections hoping to find one. Over the years, thousands of ordinary zinc pennies have been mistaken for copper because they were plated or toned, and some people have even tried to alter zinc pennies to make them look heavier or more copper-like. But professional testing always reveals the truth. Real copper examples will not stick to a magnet, will have the correct weight, and will show the correct metal composition under X-ray fluorescence testing. The coin symbolically represents a bridge between two eras, the old heavy copper pennies that lasted most of the 20th century and the modern lightweight zinc cents that we use today. That is why 1983 is such a key date, and why the Denver Mint version is so special, because no copper pennies were officially supposed to be made there that year. In the world of numismatics, that makes it a transitional error, one of the most exciting categories for collectors. When people talk about a market current value of $353 million, they are expressing the idea that if a perfect, undisputed, museum-quality 1983 copper penny were offered in a global auction with billionaire collectors competing, the sky would be the limit, because rarity combined with legend creates enormous demand. Even though realistic auction results are lower, the dream of such a value fuels endless interest, videos, and stories. The story of the 1983 1-cent coin becomes even more powerful when you realize how many people around the world are still hunting for it today, checking their pockets, old jars, bankrolls, and inherited collections, because the possibility that such a small object could carry enormous value keeps hope alive in a way few other collectibles ever can. Every time a collector pours out a pile of pennies and sees the familiar Lincoln portrait and the date 1983 with a tiny D below it, their heart beats a little faster, because they know that history has proven that miracles can happen with this exact combination of numbers and letters. The idea that something minted in the billions can still be incredibly rare is one of the greatest paradoxes of modern coin collecting, and the 1983 penny is the perfect example of that. The reason this coin is so special comes back to the moment of transition between metals. In late 1982, the United States Mint was racing to remove all copper planchets from its production lines. The new zinc blanks were cheaper, lighter, and designed to solve a national cost problem, but in huge industrial facilities like the Denver Mint, it is almost impossible to achieve absolute perfection. Hoppers, chutes, and machinery can hide old blanks, and when production changes, those hidden pieces sometimes slip through. A single copper planchet in a machine loaded with zinc blanks is all it takes to create a legendary error. When that copper blank is struck with 1983 dies, it becomes something that technically should not exist, and that forbidden existence is exactly what gives it its power in the market. The difference between a copper and zinc cent is not only weight but also feel and sound. A copper penny has a warmer, heavier presence in the hand, while a zinc penny feels lighter and often more hollow when dropped on a table. Over time, zinc pennies can blister and show ugly bubbles under the thin copper plating, while copper cents age more gracefully, developing deep browns, reds, and even rainbow toning. These physical traits help experienced collectors narrow down which 1983 D pennies are worth serious investigation. But because the plating on zinc senses copper, many ordinary coins can look deceptively similar, and that is why only precise weighing and professional testing can confirm the truth. The Lincoln portrait itself has a deep symbolic meaning on this coin. Abraham Lincoln represents unity, freedom, and endurance, and placing his image on the penny in 1909 was meant to honor those ideals for everyday Americans. By 1983, Lincoln had been on the cent for more than 7 decades, making it one of the longest-running designs in U.S. coinage history. The fact that one of the greatest modern rarities carries his image only adds to the drama, because it feels as though history itself is stamped into the metal. The Lincoln Memorial on the reverse reinforces that connection, showing a monument built to honor a man who changed the nation, now appearing on a coin that changed modern numismatics. When you hear stories about coins being worth hundreds of millions of dollars, what people are really talking about is not just metal, but rarity, desire, and competition. In the high-end coin market, wealthy collectors and institutions want to own the most famous, the most unique, and the most historically important pieces. A verified 1983 D copper penny fits all 3 categories. It is famous because of the mystery around its creation, unique because so few exist, and historically important because it marks the transition from copper to zinc. If one of these coins were to be offered in perfect condition in a global auction, with billionaires and major museums bidding, the final price could rise to levels that seem almost unbelievable, and that is where the idea of a $353 million value comes from. It represents the ultimate dream price, the peak of what human desire and competition could produce. The market for error coins has grown massively over the past few decades, especially with the rise of the internet and platforms like YouTube, where stories of incredible finds spread quickly and inspire millions. The 1983 D copper penny is often mentioned alongside legends like the 1943 copper cent and the 1913 Liberty nickel, placing it in the highest tier of American coin mythology. People who have never cared about coins before suddenly become interested when they hear that a penny could be worth more than a sports car, a house, or even a private island. Another fascinating aspect of the 1983 D penny is that it forces people to learn about science as well as history. Understanding why zinc was chosen, how copper plating works, and how weight and density can be measured brings a whole new layer of appreciation. Zinc has a density of about 7.14 grams per cubic centimeter, while copper is about 8.96, which is why the same-sized coin weighs so differently depending on the metal. This scientific fact becomes the key to unlocking a potential fortune, turning a simple digital scale into a treasure hunting tool. The Denver Mint itself adds another layer to the story. Located in Colorado, it has been producing coins since 1906 and is known for its massive output and high-speed presses. In 1983, the Denver Mint was one of the main producers of pennies for the entire country, churning out billions of coins that would be shipped nationwide. That means a rare copper 1983 D penny could have traveled anywhere, ending up in a small town store, a child's piggy bank, or a forgotten jar in a drawer. The randomness of that journey makes the hunt even more exciting, because it means that extraordinary value could be hiding anywhere. People who search for this coin often go through thousands of ordinary cents, and most of the time they find nothing special, but the thrill of the hunt keeps them going. Every time they pick up a penny and see that familiar date and mint mark, they feel a spark of possibility. This is not just about money, it is about discovery, about being the one who finds something that everyone else overlooked. The symbolism of the penny as a small but meaningful unit of value fits perfectly with this story. A single cent seems insignificant, yet in rare cases it can carry a value beyond imagination. That contrast is what makes the 1983 D penny so captivating. It teaches that even the smallest things can hold immense potential, and that history often hides its greatest treasures in the most ordinary places. As the years go by, the zinc pennies of 1983 will continue to corrode and wear, while any surviving copper examples will remain stable and beautiful, making them even more desirable. This natural process will likely make genuine copper 1983 D pennies even rarer over time, increasing their mystique and their potential market value. So the legend continues to grow. Every jar of coins, every roll from the bank, every old collection passed down through generations carries with it the possibility of containing a miracle. The 1983 D 1-cent coin, with its Lincoln portrait, its memorial, its tiny D mint mark, and its secret hidden in the metal, stands as one of the greatest modern stories in American numismatics, a story that blends history, science, economics, and human dreams into a single shining symbol of what is possible when chance and curiosity come together. The deeper you go into the story of the 1983 D1 cent coin, the more it begins to feel less like a piece of small change and more like a legend that is still being written, because unlike ancient coins that are all already discovered, this is a modern mystery that could still be hiding in someone's pocket right now. Every time a person anywhere in the world touches a penny from the early 1980s, they are unknowingly brushing against one of the most dramatic transitions in United States minting history, and that makes the 1983 D issue a living chapter of numismatics rather than a closed book. One of the reasons this penny has become so famous is because it sits right between two worlds, the old copper world and the new zinc world. For most of the 20th century, the Lincoln cent was heavy, solid, and rich in copper, and people grew up with that feel and sound. Then suddenly, in 1982 and 1983, that changed. The mint was under pressure to cut costs, and zinc was the answer, but the switch was not as clean as people imagine. Large industrial systems are messy, and the chaos of change is what created opportunity for errors. A few copper blanks survived into the 1983 production lines, and those tiny survivors became priceless relics. The psychology of the collector also plays a huge role in driving the value of this coin. Humans are drawn to stories of rarity and forbidden existence. A coin that should not exist is far more exciting than one that was made on purpose, even if both are made of the same metal. The 1983 D copper cent is not just rare, it is a mistake, a rebellion against the rules of the minting system, and that gives it an almost mythical status. Collectors are not just buying a coin, they are buying a story that they can tell and pass on. When people imagine a $353 million market value, they are imagining a scenario where this story reaches its absolute peak. They imagine one perfect, shining, red 1983 D copper penny, graded at the highest level by professional services, being offered in a room full of the world's richest collectors, museums, and investors. Each of them would want it not just for its metal, but for the prestige of owning the most famous modern penny ever made. In such a battle of egos and desires, numbers can climb far beyond what logic would normally allow, because at that level, money is no longer just money, it is power, pride, and legacy. The technical side of this coin is just as fascinating as the emotional side. The zinc core of normal 1983 D pennies is about 99.2% zinc with a thin copper layer of only about 8 microns thick. That means most of what you see and touch is copper, but most of what gives the coin its weight is zinc. On a real copper 1983 D penny, the entire blank is 95% copper with small amounts of tin and zinc, just like pre-1982 cents. That difference in composition is what makes the weight test so important, because no amount of plating or toning can change the fact that zinc is lighter than copper. Collectors who believe they have found a rare 1983 D copper penny often go through a journey of excitement, doubt, and hope. First comes the thrill when the scale shows around 3.1 grams. Then comes the fear that it might be plated or altered. Then comes the decision to send it to a grading service, where experts will examine it under microscopes, test the metal, and verify its authenticity. That moment of waiting can feel like waiting for a lottery result, because the difference between a normal penny and a genuine copper error is the difference between 1 cent and a life-changing fortune. The design elements of the coin continue to add layers of meaning. Lincoln's calm, thoughtful face on the obverse seems to watch over this drama, as if reminding collectors that history is always present even in the smallest things. The Lincoln Memorial on the reverse, with its tiny statue hidden inside, is a symbol of hidden greatness, just like the hidden copper inside a rare 1983 D penny. Even the simple words 1 cent take on a new irony when you realize how far from 1 cent this coin can be worth. The eye in the broader context of American history, the 1983 D penny also reflects a time of change. The early 1980s were years of economic adjustment, technological growth, and shifting priorities. The move from copper to zinc was not just about pennies, it was about how a nation adapts to rising costs in global markets. That makes this coin a small but powerful artifact of a much larger story. As more people become interested in coin collecting through online videos, social media, and digital marketplaces, the legend of the 1983 D copper penny continues to spread. Each new generation of collectors hears the story and begins the hunt, checking their change and dreaming of discovery. Even if they never find one, the search itself becomes part of the fun, a treasure hunt that anyone can join. The value of this coin, whether measured in thousands, millions, or the dream figure of $353 million, ultimately comes from the way it captures the human imagination. It combines chance, history, science, and desire into one small object. It reminds people that even in a world full of technology and information, there are still mysteries waiting to be uncovered, still treasures hiding in plain sight, and so the 1983 D1 cent coin continues its journey, moving from hand to hand, jar to jar, story to story. Most of them will remain ordinary, spent and forgotten, but a tiny few may carry within them the weight of copper and the weight of a dream, waiting for the moment when someone finally notices, weighs them, and realizes that they are holding not just a penny, but a piece of modern legend. As the legend of the 1983 D1 cent coin keeps growing, it slowly turns from just a collector's curiosity into something much larger, almost like a modern treasure myth, because unlike ancient gold or buried artifacts, this treasure was made by a government mint and released into everyday circulation, meaning it could still be sitting quietly in someone's home right now. That idea alone gives the coin a powerful magic, because it connects ordinary people to the possibility of extraordinary discovery, and no special tools or expensive equipment are needed to start, just curiosity, patience, and a simple scale. When people search for these pennies, they often learn very quickly how detailed the world of coin collecting really is. Every tiny line on Lincoln's face, every ridge in the Lincoln Memorial, every letter and number can tell a story. On rare error coins, even the slightest variation can mean the difference between a common piece and something truly special. But with the 1983 D copper penny, the biggest secret is hidden inside the metal itself, which makes it even more mysterious, because you cannot tell just by looking unless you really know what you are doing. This hidden nature of the coin adds to its symbolism. On the surface, it looks exactly like millions of others, but inside it may carry something completely different. That is a powerful metaphor for life, history, and even people themselves, where hidden value is often overlooked. The 1983 D penny becomes not just a collectible, but a symbol of how something small and ignored can actually be priceless. The reason why collectors are willing to pay so much for such a coin comes down to three key forces working together: rarity, story, and condition. Rarity means there are only a few known examples, story means it represents an impossible or forbidden moment in minting history, and condition means how well the coin has survived over time. A bright red, uncirculated 1983 D copper penny would be far more valuable than a worn brown one, because it would look almost exactly as it did when it first came off the press in 1983, preserving that moment in history in perfect detail. The Denver Mint's role in this story is especially important. It was one of the largest producers of pennies, and that massive scale of production is exactly what allowed a few copper blanks to slip through unnoticed. When billions of coins are being made, even a 1 in a billion mistake can happen. That is why the 1983 D copper penny is not just rare, it is statistically miraculous, and that idea adds to its attraction. Collectors love items that exist because of a perfect storm of circumstances, and this coin fits that description perfectly. Over time, stories have emerged of people who thought they found one of these pennies. Some of them turned out to be plated zinc coins, altered by individuals hoping to create a fake rarity. Others were honest mistakes, where a copper-colored zinc penny fooled even experienced eyes. But a tiny number of finds have been genuine, and those discoveries keep the legend alive, proving that the dream is not impossible. Each confirmed example becomes news in the numismatic world, discussed, analyzed, and admired. The market for rare coins is driven by more than just metal prices. It is driven by competition, prestige, and the desire to own something that no one else has. In that world, a unique or nearly unique coin can reach values that seem unbelievable to ordinary people. That is why figures like $353 million get mentioned in connection with this penny. They represent the extreme upper edge of what could happen if the right coin met the right buyers at the right moment in history. The Lincoln Memorial reverse also carries a quiet but powerful message. Inside the columns, the tiny statue of Lincoln sits calmly, often unnoticed by casual observers. That hidden detail mirrors the hidden copper inside a rare 1983 D penny. Both require careful attention to be seen, and both reward those who take the time to look closely. As years go by, more and more 1983 zinc pennies will corrode, blister, and lose their copper plating, making them less attractive and less durable. Any surviving copper examples, on the other hand, will remain stable and beautiful, standing out even more as time passes. This natural process will make genuine 1983 D copper pennies even rarer and more valuable in the future, increasing their status as modern treasures. The hunt for this coin is not just about money, it is about curiosity and the thrill of discovery. People who have never cared about coins before find themselves learning about weights, metals, mint marks, and history, all because of a simple penny. That is the true power of the 1983 D1 coin. It turns ordinary people into explorers, searching for something extraordinary in the most everyday of places, and so the story continues to grow, carried forward by every new collector, every new video, every new person who checks a handful of change and wonders if today might be the day. The 1983 D penny, small and humble, remains one of the greatest modern legends in American coinage, a reminder that even in a world of mass production and digital wealth, a tiny piece of metal can still hold a dream worth more than anyone ever imagined. The longer this story is told, the more the 1983 D 1-cent coin begins to feel like a living legend that keeps gaining strength with every passing year, because it sits right at the intersection of history, technology, human error, and human hope. In a world where almost everything feels planned and controlled, this penny represents the beauty of a mistake, a tiny accident that created something far greater than anyone ever intended. That is why people are drawn to it so deeply, because it reminds them that chance can sometimes be more powerful than design. Every time someone holds a 1983 D penny, they are holding a piece of that moment when the United States Mint was changing its ways, when old copper was being replaced by modern zinc, and when a few pieces of the past slipped through into the future. Those copper planchets were never meant to survive into 1983, yet a few did, and when they were struck with the new dies, they became symbols of that brief overlap between two eras. That overlap is what gives the coin its soul. The idea of a $353 million market value may sound like fantasy to some, but in the world of ultra-rare collectibles, it reflects something very real: the power of uniqueness. When an object exists in only one or two known examples, and when it carries a story that everyone in a field knows and respects, it becomes more than an object, it becomes a trophy. For the richest collectors, owning such a trophy is not about spending money, it is about owning a piece of history that no one else can have. The science behind the coin continues to fascinate people as well. The copper alloy used in pre-1982 pennies is not just pure copper, but a mixture designed for strength, durability, and appearance. That alloy gives the coin a certain sound when dropped, a certain weight in the hand, and a certain way of aging that zinc pennies simply cannot match. When collectors talk about the beauty of a copper 1983 D penny, they are talking about how it connects back to more than 70 years of traditional American coinage. The process of finding one of these coins is itself a story. It usually begins with curiosity, then turns into obsession as people start weighing pennies, studying their color, and learning the details of mint history. Even if they never find a genuine copper 1983 D, the journey teaches them patience, observation, and respect for the tiny details that make up the larger picture of history. The Lincoln design adds emotional depth to this hunt. Abraham Lincoln is one of the most respected figures in American history, and his image on the penny makes it feel personal and meaningful. To find a rare error with his portrait on it feels like discovering a hidden chapter of the nation's story, one that was never meant to be written but somehow came into existence anyway. The market for rare pennies is also influenced by how stories spread. A single discovery can spark worldwide interest, sending thousands of people searching through their change. Videos, articles, and social media posts keep the legend alive, and every new generation of collectors hears the same thrilling tale, that a simple penny from 1983 with a DM to the date might secretly be made of copper and might secretly be worth a fortune. As more people become aware of this, the number of ordinary zinc 1983 D pennies being examined grows, but the number of genuine copper examples remains tiny. This imbalance between searchers and actual treasures makes the real coins even more desirable, because everyone knows how hard they are to find. Scarcity combined with demand is the engine that drives extreme values. The Lincoln Memorial on the reverse, standing tall and proud, can be seen as a symbol of stability and endurance, while the hidden copper inside a rare 1983 D penny represents a secret that survived against the odds. Together, they tell a story of strength, patience, and hidden potential. In the end, the 1983 D 1-cent coin is not just about money. It is about the thrill of discovery, the beauty of history, and the idea that something ordinary can become extraordinary. Whether its value is measured in thousands, millions, or the dream figure of $353 million, its true worth lies in the way it captures the imagination of people all over the world, inspiring them to look more closely at the small things, to question what they think they know, and to believe that sometimes, the greatest treasures really do come in the smallest packages. The legend of the 1983 D 1-cent coin keeps growing because it touches something deep in human nature, the desire to believe that luck and history can collide in the palm of your hand. A single penny, something most people would drop on the ground without a second thought, suddenly becomes a gateway to dreams of unimaginable value, and that contrast is what gives this story its endless power. When you think about how many billions of these coins were struck and how only a microscopic number might carry the secret of copper inside them, it feels like the universe itself was playing a game of chance. Every genuine 1983 D copper penny that has ever been discovered adds another layer to this story. Each one has its own journey, from the moment it was struck by a roaring press inside the Denver Mint, to the moment it left the building in a bag of coins, to the years it spent moving through shops, banks, and pockets, and finally to the hands of someone who noticed something different about it. That journey can take decades, and when it finally ends in discovery, it becomes a moment that collectors remember forever. The economic side of the story is just as fascinating. In the early 1980s, copper prices were rising, and the US government was under pressure to keep the cost of producing coins below their face value. The switch to zinc was a practical decision, but it had unintended consequences. Those unintended consequences created one of the most famous modern error coins in history. This shows how even large systems can produce tiny cracks where extraordinary things slip through. The way collectors talk about a potential $353 million value reflects how powerful the story has become. In high-end collecting, it is not unusual for the most famous and rarest items to reach astronomical prices, because they represent something no one else can have. A perfect, authenticated 1983 D copper penny would not just be a coin, it would be a symbol of the ultimate modern treasure, and that is what fuels such extreme valuations. The technical process of confirming one of these coins is intense and precise. Experts use scales accurate to hundredths of a gram, microscopes to study the surface, and advanced machines that can analyze the metal composition without damaging the coin. This combination of science and history is part of what makes numismatics so appealing. A simple penny becomes a subject of serious investigation, and every test brings the owner closer to knowing whether they hold something priceless or just an ordinary cent. Even the wear and tear on a coin tells a story. Scratches, small dents, and changes in color show how long a coin has traveled and how many hands it has passed through. On a rare 1983 D copper penny, those marks become part of its identity, proof that it lived a real life in the real world before being recognized as something special. In a way, that makes it more meaningful than a coin that was never used at all. The emotional impact of this story cannot be overstated. People who search for this coin often do so with their families, teaching children about history, money, and careful observation. A simple hobby turns into a shared adventure, where every handful of change could bring excitement. Even if no rare coin is found, the experience itself becomes valuable. The Lincoln design continues to anchor this story in something timeless. Lincoln's image has been a constant on the penny through generations, and that continuity makes the sudden appearance of a rare error even more dramatic. It is like a familiar face hiding an extraordinary secret. As time goes on, fewer and fewer 1983 pennies will remain in circulation, and the chance of finding a genuine copper example will only become smaller. That scarcity will continue to drive interest and value, keeping the legend alive for future generations. People will keep searching, keep weighing, and keep dreaming, because the idea that a tiny piece of copper could be worth a fortune is simply too powerful to let go. And so the 1983 D1 cent coin moves forward through history, not just as money, but as a story, a mystery, and a symbol of hidden potential, reminding everyone who hears about it that sometimes the greatest wonders are found in the smallest and most ordinary places. The story of the 1983 D1 cent coin does not fade with time, it actually becomes stronger, because every year that passes without many new discoveries makes the genuine copper examples even more mysterious and even more desirable. In the world of collecting, mystery is just as powerful as rarity, and this coin has both. People know it exists, but almost no one knows where the remaining ones might be, and that unknown keeps the fire of curiosity burning. Think about how many pennies are sitting in drawers, jars, old wallets, piggy banks, and inherited collections all over the world. Some of those collections have not been touched in decades. Inside them could be coins that were taken out of circulation in the 1980s and forgotten. Among them, there could be a single 1983 D penny that weighs a little more than it should, that feels just a little different in the hand, quietly waiting for someone to notice. That idea is what makes this story feel like a real-life treasure hunt. The market value of rare coins is driven by more than just supply and demand. It is driven by emotion, reputation, and competition. When a coin becomes famous, it enters a different world where wealthy collectors are willing to pay far beyond what the metal itself is worth. A famous coin is like a piece of art or a historical relic. It carries a story that people want to own. The 1983 D copper penny has become one of those stories, and that is why its theoretical value can reach incredible numbers like $353 million in the imagination of collectors. The science behind the coin continues to play a central role in separating fact from fantasy. Many people believe they have found a copper 1983D penny, but most turn out to be zinc coins that have been plated or altered. This makes the real ones even more important, because they stand out as true survivors of a moment in minting history. When experts confirm one, it is like discovering a rare fossil or a lost manuscript, something that proves the legend is real. The design of the penny also adds a layer of poetic meaning. Abraham Lincoln, a man who led the nation through one of its most difficult transitions, appears on a coin that itself represents a major transition in American money. The Lincoln Memorial, with its strong columns and hidden statue, reflects stability on the outside and depth on the inside, just like the coin itself. For many people, a hunt for this penny becomes a personal journey. They learn to slow down, to look carefully, to pay attention to small details. They begin to see beauty and interest in objects that once seemed boring. That change in perspective is one of the greatest gifts of collecting, and the 1983D penny is often the doorway that leads people into that world. The idea that something so small can be so valuable also changes how people think about money and worth. It reminds them that value is not always about size or appearance, but about history, rarity, and meaning. A 1-cent coin that can be worth more than most people will ever earn in a lifetime is a powerful symbol of that truth. As long as people keep telling this story, the legend will continue. Each new video, each new article, each new person who checks their change adds another thread to the tapestry. The 1983D 1-cent coin is no longer just a piece of copper or zinc, it is a cultural phenomenon, a modern myth that blends reality and dream into something unforgettable. And somewhere, in some forgotten place, there may still be a tiny round piece of metal stamped with the year 1983 and a small D below it, waiting for the moment when someone finally looks close enough to see that it is not like the others, and that inside it carries the weight not just of copper, but of a story that could change everything. The legend of the 1983D 1-cent coin continues to stretch across time, because it is not limited by geography, wealth, or background. Anyone, anywhere, who can hold a penny can be part of this story, and that makes it one of the most democratic treasure hunts in the world. Unlike gold bars locked in vaults or rare paintings hidden in private collections, this coin was released into everyday life, mixed with billions of others, and that means its fate is still open, still undecided, still waiting. One of the most powerful things about this penny is how it connects ordinary people to something extraordinary. A child opening a piggy bank, a shopkeeper counting change, a collector sorting through rolls from the bank, all of them could be the one who discovers a true copper 1983D cent. That possibility gives the coin a kind of magic, because it turns daily routine into potential adventure. The extreme market value people talk about, the idea of $353 million, comes from imagining the ultimate scenario where one of these coins becomes the most famous modern penny ever known. In that world, it is no longer just about metal or minting errors, it is about owning a legend. Wealthy collectors and institutions compete not just for objects, but for stories, and this story is one of the most powerful in American coin history. The science behind the coin keeps everything grounded in reality. No matter how exciting the story becomes, the truth always comes back to weight, density, and metal composition. A real copper 1983D penny will always weigh more, feel heavier, and behave differently over time than a zinc one. That simple physical fact is what allows the dream to exist, because it means there is a clear way to separate ordinary coins from extraordinary ones. The Lincoln design continues to give this story a sense of continuity. For more than a century, Lincoln has watched over the penny, and during that time the world has changed in countless ways. The 1983D coin is just one moment in that long history, but it is a moment that captures the tension between old and new, between tradition and change. Collectors who search for this penny often talk about how it changes the way they see money. A handful of loose change is no longer boring, it becomes a puzzle, a field of possibilities. Each coin is a tiny artifact with its own journey and its own potential, and that awareness makes the world feel richer and more interesting. The idea that a single cent could be worth more than a luxury house or a supercar challenges everything people think they know about value. It shows that value is created by human belief and desire just as much as by material. The 1983D copper penny, whether or not it ever sells for $353 million, already holds immense value in the imagination of collectors. As years turn into decades, this story will only become more legendary. New generations will hear about the penny that was not supposed to exist, the coin that crossed from copper into zinc history by accident, and they will want to search for it too. The hunt will continue, passed from one person to the next, like a secret that everyone wants to uncover, and somewhere in that endless flow of pennies, there may still be a tiny disc of copper stamped with 1983 and a small d, quietly carrying the weight of history and the promise of a dream, waiting for the moment when it is finally recognized for what it truly is. The story of the 1983 D1 coin keeps unfolding because it lives in the minds of people who believe that history can still surprise us. In a world where so much feels already discovered, this penny stands out as something that still holds mystery, still holds the possibility of a miracle hiding in plain sight. That feeling is what keeps people searching year after year, never fully letting go of the dream. What makes this coin so powerful is that it connects the everyday to the extraordinary. A penny is something people see and use without thinking, yet this one particular year and mint mark combination carries the weight of a once-in-a-generation error. The idea that a copper blank from an older era slipped into a new zinc production line and was struck with 1983 D dies feels almost poetic, like a piece of the past refusing to disappear. The imagined market value of $353 million is not just about money, it is about what people are willing to give up to own something truly unique. In the highest levels of collecting, ownership is about legacy. To own the most famous modern penny ever made would be to own a piece of American history that could never be repeated. That kind of prestige can drive prices to levels that seem impossible to ordinary people, but in the rarefied world of elite collectors, it becomes believable. The physical reality of the coin continues to anchor this dream. Its weight, its metal, its sound, and even the way it ages over time all serve as clues. A genuine copper 1983 D penny is not just visually different, it is physically different, and that difference is what gives collectors something solid to search for in a sea of ordinary change. The Lincoln Memorial on the back of the coin stands as a reminder of endurance. Just as the monument has stood for generations, the story of this penny continues to stand strong, passed down through conversations, articles, and videos. The tiny statue of Lincoln inside the memorial mirrors the hidden copper inside the rare coin, both waiting for careful eyes to notice them. People who become caught up in this story often find that it changes them. They become more patient, more observant, more curious about the small details of the world. A simple hobby turns into a way of seeing, where nothing is too small to be interesting or potentially valuable. The 1983 D penny also teaches something deeper about history. It shows that even in a modern, highly controlled system like the US Mint, chance still has a role to play. Mistakes can happen, and sometimes those mistakes become treasures. That idea gives hope to everyone who believes that unexpected beauty and value can still appear in a structured world. As time continues to move forward, fewer people will remember the days when copper pennies were common, and that will make a copper 1983 D even more special. It will stand as a final echo of an older way of making money, frozen in time by accident, and so the legend continues, carried by every person who ever weighs a penny, whoever looks closely at a date and a mint mark, whoever wonders if this small, ordinary object might secretly be something extraordinary. The 1983 D1 coin remains a symbol of that hope, a reminder that sometimes, the greatest stories are hidden in the smallest things. The story of the 1983 D1 coin reaches its full resonance when you consider not just its physical characteristics, but the ripple effect it has had on generations of collectors, hobbyists, and treasure hunters. It is a coin that exists at the intersection of history, economics, science, and human imagination, a small disc of metal with the power to inspire dreams, teach lessons, and connect ordinary people with the extraordinary. Each penny carries a whisper of the past, a note from the mint presses in Denver, and a hint of possibility for anyone who dares to look closely. The rarity of a genuine 1983 D copper penny is what fuels its legendary status. With billions of regular zinc pennies produced that year, the odds of a copper planchet surviving into circulation are minuscule, yet that near impossibility is exactly what makes each confirmed example so precious. The excitement of holding one, knowing it slipped through the cracks of history, is not merely about potential monetary value, it is about touching a tangible piece of modern numismatic lore, a coin that carries with it decades of mystery, intrigue, and wonder. Collectors are captivated not just by the coin's scarcity, but by the story it tells. It represents a time of transition. The U.S. Mint's move from copper to zinc in the early 1980s, the rising cost of metal, and the challenges of mass production. It is a reminder that even highly controlled systems are vulnerable to chance, and that from those rare mistakes, legends are born. That narrative, intertwined with the enduring image of Abraham Lincoln on the obverse and the Lincoln Memorial on the reverse, transforms a simple penny into an artifact of culture, history, and human curiosity. The technical details of the coin, the weight, composition, and subtle differences between copper and zinc add to its allure. They are the tools through which the ordinary becomes extraordinary. A scale, a careful eye, and a knowledgeable mind can reveal what millions overlook, turning a common object into a potential treasure. The thrill of discovery is heightened by the knowledge that, for every 1,000 pennies checked, perhaps only one could be a true rarity, a tangible connection to a moment that defied intention. Market speculation, storytelling, and legend have amplified the penny's mystique to near mythical proportions. While the everyday value of a 1983 penny is 1 cent, in the realm of errors, provenance, and perfect condition, numbers like $353 million enter the conversation not as guaranteed outcomes, but as symbols of what human desire and rarity can create. The coin represents hope, imagination, and the belief that fortune can sometimes be hidden where no one expects it. Over decades, this coin has inspired entire communities of collectors, online forums, YouTube videos, and countless conversations about metal, minting, and luck. It has educated people about the science of coinage, the economics of production, and the nuances of grading and authentication. Beyond the monetary and historical significance, it fosters a sense of wonder, curiosity, and engagement that is rare in modern life. As time passes, the zinc pennies of 1983 will continue to wear, corrode, and disappear from circulation, while the few surviving copper 1983 pennies will stand as enduring relics. Each of these rare coins holds a story that began in the Denver Mint and has traveled across decades, sometimes unnoticed, until careful hands finally recognize its value. That journey, from press to pocket, from obscurity to legend, is what gives this penny its lasting magic. Ultimately, the 1983 1-cent coin is far more than a coin. It is a bridge between past and present, a symbol of hidden potential, and a testament to the power of human curiosity and imagination. It reminds us that even the smallest, most ordinary objects can carry extraordinary stories, and that the world still contains moments of surprise, chance, and wonder waiting to be discovered. In its weight, its design, its history, and its legend, the 1983 penny teaches a profound lesson. Greatness often comes in the tiniest of packages, and sometimes the most incredible treasures are found where we least expect them. The 1983 penny's tale will continue to inspire, fascinate, and enthrall collectors for generations to come, living forever as one of the most remarkable stories in modern numismatics. It is a coin that proves, beyond doubt, that even 1 cent can carry the weight of a legend.